Hi, this is Mr. Guy, and we're going to be talking about interest groups. And interest groups are different than political parties, and they're almost like what I think James Madison and the Founding Fathers thought about factions. But factions are definitely something that they were worried about, and it's something that interest groups are big in our life, even though we don't talk about them a lot. They have a major influence on politics, on our politicians, on government in basically our way of life, even though some of you might not be in an interest group and some of you might. We will see, but this is about interest groups. They're private organizations that try to persuade public officials to respond to shared attitudes of its members. They're protected by the Constitution in the First Amendment, the right to assemble and the right to petition government. An example would be leagues, clubs, federations, unions, committees, associations. Typical ones you might have heard about would be the NRA, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Persons. You might find AARP for older people, and then Greenpeace and others. There's lots of interest groups that are around there. Interest groups versus political parties. Political party nominates candidates for public office. Interest groups do not. Political party runs government, is involved in government. Interest groups want to affect policy and affect these, but political parties are in government. Interest groups are not. A political party influences government. Interest groups are private organizations that try to influence public policies, goals that our government pursues in many of the areas of human affairs. Political parties are interested in many, many different issues. Interest groups typically focus on one. It might be the environment. Political parties deal with the environment, they deal with immigration, they deal with taxes, they deal with infrastructure, where an interest group might be guns. The NRA might be old people's and their things. AARP. It might be the environment and those kind of things. The good of interest groups, they stimulate interest in public affairs. They represent a group that has shared attitudes. They give specialized information on government, employment, price levels. They engage people in political action. They get people together so they can work together and maybe sign petitions or go out and protest or do certain things. They provide more checks and balances to government. They compete with other interest groups. So the auto lobbyists versus environmental groups would be two competing interest groups. The bad influence is not always proportional to the size of the group. More money equals more influence. Very interesting that the NRA's got about 3 million members that are actually dues paying members of the NRA, but they basically have stopped all background checks and all gun regulations. So basically, their influence is bigger than their size. It's hard to tell how many the group actually really represents. The American Citizens Committee, um, National Organization for Women, may not represent the views of all the people they claim to represent. That might be in a union, and that they might not represent everybody that's in the union. And unfair practices. They might have bribery, threats, revenge if you're not in the union or if you're not in that interest group or something like that. Most are formed on the basis of economic interests, so business, labor, agriculture, professional. There's the Chamber of Commerce that represents businesses, the AFL-CIO, which represents workers, the American Farm Bureau, which represents farmers. Others are based on political and social issues like veterans, elderly, environment, religion. The ACLU, the Sierra Club, AARP is my elderly one. The NAACP is for African Americans, Christian Coalition for religious purposes. They definitely, interest groups at work, they try to influence public opinion. They provide information to people. They try to build a positive image about the information that they're giving. They try to promote a specific public policy. They create public attitudes using propaganda, technique of persuasion, which is propaganda. They begin with a conclusion and provide facts to support, disregards those that will not support their conclusion. They provide one side of an issue, that's like card stacking. So they definitely use propaganda to get their word out. They form PACs, political action committees, to raise campaign funds and influence behavior. Sometimes they'll deal with super PACs, which have unlimited funds and things to help a party or a person for elections. They lobby government. They put pressure on a legislature. Legislators, they'll basically go into their office and say, I gave you money for your campaign. Would you help me with this? They talk to government officials and say, here's what we need done. And these lobbying could be grassroots from the people, they could be from average voters, they could be from the company themselves. So that is it about interest groups. So if you have any questions, feel free to post or ask. Make sure you go back and take notes and make sure you have all the notes on each one of these slides. Thank you very much.